There's a moment from this past week that's been circulating in clips online. Princess Leonor standing at the podium of the Gran Teatre del Liceu in Barcelona, closing her remarks at the 2026 Princess of Girona Awards, and as she finishes, the camera catches her family, King Felipe, Queen Letizia, her sister Infanta Sofia, all of them smiling, visibly moved, applauding not out of obligation but because something in the room had actually landed. It's a small moment. It lasts maybe 4 seconds on screen. But it's worth slowing down on, because it tells you something real about what Leonor is building, and it's not just goodwill. It's a communication strategy, whether she's fully conscious of it as one or not, and it's quietly becoming one of the most effective tools the Spanish monarchy has for staying relevant to a generation that has no particular reason to care about a crown. Start with what actually happened, because the substance of the speech matters more than the smile itself. The Princess of Girona Awards is one of the monarchy's most significant annual events, a ceremony that recognizes young people across Spain doing exceptional work in science, culture, technology, and social action. Leonor didn't just read names off a card. She used her closing address to talk about who she considers her actual role models, and she deliberately structured the answer as a rejection of celebrity culture. Her role models, she said, aren't famous people, aren't people defined by glamour or fame. She singled out researchers who train bacteria for scientific applications, an astrophysicist searching for exoplanets, a filmmaker confronting sexual violence through her work, an entrepreneur turning organic waste into sustainable bioplastics, a community organizer building sports opportunities in an underserved Barcelona neighborhood. She called these people her real influencers, and said the throwline connecting all of them was curiosity, perseverance, and a commitment to improving the world rather than accumulating attention. That's a fairly pointed thing for a 20-year-old future queen to say, in an era where royal family members across Europe frequently get more coverage for red carpet appearances than for anything they've actually said. Here's why the smile in that closing moment matters beyond just being a nice image. Royal communications, going back generations, have always relied on two separate currencies: substance, meaning the actual content of speeches, policy positions, patronages, official duties, and warmth, meaning the human, unscripted feeling moments that make a royal figure seem relatable rather than purely ceremonial. Most royals are strong in one currency and weaker in the other. Felipe, by most accounts, is a substance-heavy communicator, formal, measured, careful, someone whose public image is built on competence and restraint rather than charisma. Letizia has spent 2 decades building warmth through visible, hands-on engagement with causes like mental health and rare diseases. What's notable about Leonor, at this early stage of her public life, is that she appears to be developing both currencies simultaneously, and the Girona speech is a clean example of that. The content was substantive, a genuine values statement about what kind of public figure she wants to be. The delivery, and the family's visible reaction to it, supplied the warmth. You rarely see both land in the same 30-second clip. This matters more for Leonor specifically than it would for almost any other young royal in Europe, because of the structural problem we've talked about before with her father's institution. The Spanish monarchy is not naturally popular the way, say, the Danish or Norwegian monarchies currently are. Support for the crown in Spain splits heavily along generational and ideological lines, with younger Spaniards showing measurably less attachment to the institution than their parents, and with a meaningful share of the political left holding an explicitly Republican position. Leonor is going to inherit that fractured landscape eventually, and unlike her father, she won't have a decade of quiet, competence-driven imagery building to lean on before she takes the throne. What she can build, starting now, is a different kind of asset entirely, personal likability that isn't purely inherited from the institution but is specific to her as an individual. A viral clip of a genuine smile doesn't fix a constitutional crisis or settle a Catalonia dispute. But it does something else that's arguably just as important for the monarchy's long-term survival: it makes a rising generation feel some kind of personal connection to the person who will eventually be asking for their loyalty, even if they've never cared much for the institution she represents. It's worth being honest about how this compares to her father's era at the same age, because the contrast is sharp. Felipe, at 20, was a far more guarded, formal public figure than Leonor currently is, partly a product of a different media environment, and partly just a different personal style. There was no viral clip culture in the early 1990s the way there is now. Royal image making then happened through newspapers, magazines, and controlled television appearances, all of it slower, more curated, more distant. Leonor is coming of age inside a completely different information ecosystem, one where a 4-second reaction shot from a legitimate awards ceremony can travel across TikTok and Instagram within hours, get clipped, captioned, and reposted by accounts with no formal connection to the palace at all, and reach millions of people who will never watch the full speech or know anything about the Girona Awards themselves. That's a genuinely different kind of exposure than anything her father experienced at the same stage, and it cuts both ways. It means moments of real substance, like her comments about scientists and community organizers, can travel further and faster than they ever could have in the 1990s. It also means the palace has dramatically less control over which 4 seconds of a 20-minute speech become the public's actual takeaway. That loss of control is worth sitting with, because it's the flip side of everything we've just described. Zarzuela cannot dictate which clip goes viral or how it gets framed once it leaves an official broadcast and enters the algorithm-driven ecosystem of short-form video. A genuinely warm, well-earned moment like the one at the Laisu can just as easily be repackaged by fan accounts into something closer to celebrity worship, stripped of the actual content of what she said, reduced to aesthetics, captioned with language about her appearance rather than her ideas. Search her name on any major platform right now and you'll find exactly that tension playing out, genuine coverage of her speech sitting alongside an enormous volume of content that has nothing to do with her actual words at all, focused instead on her looks, her outfits, her expressions frame by frame. That's not something Leonor or the palace chose. It's simply what happens to any young public figure inside a media environment built around engagement rather than accuracy. The palace's actual strategy, as best as it can be read from the outside, seems to be to keep producing substantive material, real speeches with real content, and trust that some of it breaks through the noise on its own terms, the way the Girona Award remarks clearly have this week. There's a broader pattern here too, if you zoom out. Across her public appearances over the past year, her military graduation ceremony in July carried real institutional weight, marking the completion of a 3-year training program across all 3 branches of Spain's armed forces, a genuine achievement that required years of discipline in demanding, often physically brutal conditions. Her naval voyage aboard the Juan Sebastián de Elcano was a months-long deployment, not a photo opportunity. Her papal audience in June was a formal diplomatic engagement, not a lifestyle appearance. And now, this address at the Girona Awards, delivered with what appears to be genuine conviction about the kind of achievement she wants to elevate. None of these are soft, image-driven events in the way a red carpet appearance or a magazine profile would be. They're substantive commitments, military service, cultural diplomacy, public advocacy for scientific and social achievement, and the warmth that comes through in moments like the closing smile at the Laisu isn't separate from that substance. It appears to be a byproduct of it, the visible relief and pride of someone who has just said something she actually believes, standing in front of a family that appears to genuinely share that pride, not performing it for cameras. Whether this becomes a durable asset for the monarchy long-term is something nobody can answer yet, including, almost certainly, Leonor herself. Public affection built on viral moments is notoriously fragile, capable of curdling quickly if a future controversy, a poorly received statement, or simply the ordinary passage of time erodes the goodwill. Charm is not armor against constitutional crises or generational shifts in political attitude. But it is, at minimum, a genuine asset that her father didn't have in the same form at her age, a reservoir of personal likability, built through moments of authentic public warmth layered on top of real substantive achievement, that gives her something to draw on as she eventually steps into an institution that a meaningful share of her own generation has already decided it doesn't need. The smile at the Laisu this week didn't melt Spain, and no single moment could plausibly do that for a country as genuinely divided on the question of monarchy as this one is. What it did do was offer a small, real glimpse of what Leonor's version of the crown might actually look like, substantive, self-aware, and, at least in this one unscripted moment, sincerely warm.